Hello and welcome back to the live stream at the Guess Education Global Leadership Summit. It's great to have you here with us today, so thank you all very much for joining us. Just a few bits of information about the live sessions before we get underway. You'll see a chat panel there on the right-hand side of the event platform. Please do feel free to ask any questions you have. These are being moderated and we'll do our best to pass these along to the speakers throughout the session. Please note, because they're being moderated, you might just see a slight delay in your questions showing, but fear not, we will get around to it. We'll try to get through them all. If we don't manage to, don't worry, these are all saved down in the system and we'll get back to you after the event. So I'd like to introduce you now to our speakers. First of all, Jonathan Hughes, Education Consultant and Manager of High Performance Learning, and Brendan Law, Director General of MiSK Schools. So that's more than enough from me. I'll hand over to you, gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Barney, and welcome, Brendan. Welcome to everyone. I'm delighted that you're joining us. And Brendan, I just wonder whether, because we're having a fireside chat, could you put another log on the fire? Because I know we're going to talk for a bit. If you could do that, that'd be fantastic.
Well, Jonathan, the title of this session brought back such happy memories of times well spent with you in our various schools at Milton Abbey and Westbourne House that I figured, as we had real fires there, that we had to have some kind of a fire for this session. So yes, there we are. We have a fireside chat, and I can use the sound if you run out of words.
Which is brilliant. As people will have gathered, Brendan and I have known each other since really the turn of the century, which makes us seem very old, but we are very experienced, is actually how I prefer to put it. And we were both heads of, he was head of Westbourne House and I was head of Milton Abbey, which are both down in the south of England, two independent schools down there. Then Brendan went on and became the founding head of Brighton College in Abu Dhabi, the Director of Education and Headmaster of Cranley School in Abu Dhabi, and the Senior Vice President of Education for GEMS, with oversight of their UK curriculum private schools. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he also found time to also do a bit of sailing, and occasionally is known to play golf, but only if he's allowed out and being good. So the fact that we ended up running two small not-for-profit schools in the south of England and ended up running large international schools over in this part of the world, certainly for me, it was a transition. I wonder, Brendan, could you talk about how founding two large branded international schools in UAE, Brighton College and Cranley, how did that affect your leadership style, and what did you discover from that?
That's an excellent question, Jonathan. I mean, for me, firstly, just the sheer transition from a relatively small and very well established 100-plus-year-old prep school in leafy West Sussex, beautiful landscape that it was, and a small board and a relatively small school, and a wonderful school. I had a lovely time there, but nothing really prepares you for life on the international stage. I can remember, actually, as I landed in Abu Dhabi, I came straight up to see you, because at that stage you just started at Repton fairly recently, and I asked you how it was going, and you said to me, the word you used was fascinating, and I suppose that was probably the sort of initial start. But in terms of leadership style and what impact the experiences that I gained both at Brighton and at Cranley, I think I learned a huge number of really important lessons. I think the most important thing I learned was that you simply can't do it all yourself. You know, in a relatively small independent school in the UK, it's very hands-on, especially in the prep school world. And you do actually do a huge amount of things yourself. At Westbourne, I even locked up. But you know, in a large-scale school such as Cranley or Brighton, I learned very quickly the importance of empowering colleagues and teamwork. And you know, I think I was blessed in both schools, actually, with exceptional teachers and leaders. And I think that's probably the most important thing that any international leader can do, certainly heading it up, is finding and identifying the very best people that you can, identifying their roles, and making sure that you get a good balance on the team, and then getting them actively involved. in the process of running the school, because you simply can't do it yourself. And I think humility is a really important word in leadership. Servant-hearted leadership, being there for your team, looking after them, working hard on their behalf to support them, because it's challenging when people are fresh off the boat.
And quite young as well.
And young.
I mean, that's a surprising thing, isn't it? How young.
So just letting them know that you've got their back, that you care deeply about them, that you'll work really, really hard in their best interests. And then also encourage them, empower them, ask them to come knock your door down with initiatives, because it's brilliant what people come up with. And I can remember Steve Rigby, who was the outgoing head at Westbourne when I took over. Steve Rigby said to me, as he was leaving and I was coming in, he said, "Brendan, headship's actually really easy. All you need to do is find really good people around you, and then they'll do all the work for you." And you didn't mean it in quite that way, and you'll get what I'm suggesting. But really, if you've got exceptional people where your weaknesses and you really stop managing and micromanaging, that's the worst kind of leadership on the international stage. You cannot micromanage. On the contrary, what you need to do is empower and let them free. So I think those are some of my key lessons.
It's fascinating, that, isn't it? In terms of, and I'm sorry, I'm using that word. And you're right. I did say the most exciting word to use in this part of the world is fascinating, but it's really enlivening to often find with international staff how energetic, enthusiastic they are. They need some guidance at times, but they are often free of cynicism and full of enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
And it's how one harnesses those, which is the important part.
Yeah.
Because
sorry, Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I love about working on the international stage is that as expats in these wonderful countries that we are privileged to live in, there's a real sort of sense of cohesiveness around the community in the context of you're out of your comfort zone. It's very easy in your home city or your home country with your family around you, and you've got that support network, etc. It's very easy to get quite comfortable in a school like that. Here, everyone has to really stand on their own 2 feet, be resilient, be adaptable. I think it's been, I'm sure that we've coped extremely well through the whole COVID crisis, on the basis that actually staff, just by virtue of getting on the plane and coming out, those that actually, managed to settle in quickly and enjoy it and make the most of it. Is that shared resilience and but also that shared enthusiasm for really trying new things and being adventurous and courageous in education is something that I think the international schools give, which perhaps in the schools that we were involved in the UK, we didn't have quite that same sort of spirit amongst the staff team.
Isn't that interesting that you would find members of staff who'd been there since soon after they landed with Noah, and they had been, it was their chair in the staff room, and they'd had it for the last 25 years.
That's right.
And it's that contrast. Just touching on that, and just diverting a little bit. How have you found recruiting? Because sometimes, yes, you do get very resilient, enthusiastic, energetic staff, but perhaps it was just me, but not always was my selection or our selection of staff right. How are we going to keep on finding the right staff for international schools, and in particular for you, where perhaps KSA provides more of a challenge in terms of recruiting?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to establish a really clear vision and the ability to articulate it, and to be able to communicate that and get that message out there into the international community. And using as many diverse platforms as possible in order to do that. I mean, this is a case in point. If anybody wants a job, get in touch. It's but, sorry, that's probably breaking the rules. I don't know if Guess will tell me off for that.
Be careful, the fire's on. So,
but no, I mean, yeah, I can remember being absolutely blown away when I was setting up Cranley. I was a team of one at that stage. I was director of education for TDIC, and I operated in the office. We were designing the school like crazy and getting it built, and we had a really clear vision. I had some wonderful backup from Cranley UK, of course, and a lot of support coming in there in terms of the IP and the curriculum and everything else that we needed. But of course, when it comes to recruiting, the key thing, I believe, in any school leader, if you asked me to pass one piece of advice on that any leader listening to this, I would encourage them to uphold is, if you're the head, it doesn't matter how big your school is, make sure you interview every single person that is in your school. And I've lived by that. So when Cranleigh came along, and we advertised, and I think we did a really good job marketing-wise. We got the message out there, the vision out there really well on the international stage through various channels and platforms. The thing that I was blown away with was that when we put all the TES ads in and the CVs came flooding in, there were 1,800 CVs for 64 jobs. And I literally took those myself and I went through every one of them, because it's that important a job to select the right people, to get the right balance, to find the very, very best people that you possibly can. It took me a week, literally 8 hours a day, going through and sifting every one of those CVs. And then I handpicked them. I interviewed every single one of them in Mike Wilson's study and dining room in Cranleigh, UK, online, of course, in various other ways. But I interviewed 170 people in 2 weeks, and I've lived by that all my career. And I still, to this day, here at MiSK Schools, interview every single person that will come to us. And I will continue to do that when we move to our new campus in a year's time, which, by the way, is going to be quite extraordinary. I can't wait to tell people more.
Well, I was going to come back to that one, just, because that's really exciting. And we can put another advert for jobs in at that particular stage, where you can plug away again. But it is that interesting part, because part of the concern of the international schooling is going to be the shortage of high quality teachers. And I know it touches slightly on the MiSK's part, but how are countries such as UAE, such as KSA, going to begin to develop their own high quality teachers to work in international schools? Do you see that happening, or?
We're doing a combination. So obviously, like Cranleigh, with that fantastic set of CVs, I was able to really hand select an extraordinarily high quality team, and hence the school's success. I'm always the first to say Cranleigh's success was really the team. Amazing people, and I was privileged to work with them. And obviously great support from the homeschool, and a really supportive board. TDIC's board at the time that we were developing that school were incredibly generous and supportive, and chasing education first rather than profit first, which is another whole story in itself. But in terms of teacher development and attracting them here to Saudi, and retaining them. Again, I think you've got to firstly benchmark yourself on the very best. His Royal Highness's vision for MiSK Schools is to be in the top 50 worldwide. In fact, top 20 really is his genuine ambition. So we will build a campus that will rival anything in the world. 20 hectares. Cranleigh was 8. It was the biggest at the time in Abu Dhabi, and this will dwarf it. It's going to be quite extraordinary what we'll have on that campus. But also in terms of the quality of the teachers, obviously we have exceptional packages which the board has signed off on. It's a not-for-profit context, so we're a little bit, it's a little bit easier in that sense. Perhaps to be able to look after teachers exceptionally well. We house them very well. We give them important, good salaries. But the most important thing I've always found with teachers is, frankly, as long as they've got a good lifestyle, what they're really most interested in is having facilities and career professional development that is second to none. That's what they always ask me for at interview is, what's your career professional development like? And so what we're going to be doing, and in fact it's already started, is we're setting up our own teacher training academy. We're calling it MiSK Schools Academy. We're building in the admin building of the new campus an entire suite of theatres, lecture halls, and teacher training facilities. And where we can't find the teachers, especially because we're a 50-50 mix between Saudi colleagues and leading international teachers, to raise the bar in our own team, but also to bring in and develop the future teachers and leaders of the school and across the whole kingdom, is we're going to grow and develop our own academy.
Brilliant. And
do a lot of in-house development. We'll hire top curriculum developers as well alongside that, because alongside the teacher side is that we're going to have our own unique MiSK curriculum.
I was going to say, from what, when we were building the Fire, for this. Before you set it alight, you were talking about developing a specialized curriculum.
Yeah.
And could you just talk about that a little bit in relation also, because I'd like to come back to look at how other curriculums work in international settings.
Yeah.
And to see whether there's a match or mismatch or whatever.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you'll know from your time at Repton, I know from Brighton and Cranley, you can plug and play exactly what happens, but in the home school, but it doesn't really work in the international setting. Of course it doesn't. So you've got to adapt it. And whether it's the British curriculum or the IB curriculum or the American curriculum, at GEMS I was blessed to see all three in action, plus the Indian curriculum. So it was fascinating to be able to work in that context as well and learn so much working alongside the great Sir Christopher Stone. Honestly, it was a huge honor and privilege to kind of learn those sorts of ropes. But what I know for sure doesn't work in any international setting. It's a bit like colonialism. You can't just come in and try and force people to be something else. It might work brilliantly in Finland, for example, but it's not necessarily going to work here in Saudi Arabia because the culture and the community are different. So our mandate here is to work with the very best that's available within existing well-known curricula. So we partner with Cambridge, for example, and we use Cambridge content when we use
Cambridge Exam Board.
And we don't work with the full exam as it is. And so, there's not going to be a British school, but there are great elements attached to the standards, the rubrics, etc., the assessment strategies from Cambridge. Yeah. And that's all really good. But then to bring a pedagogical approach, which is going to work within our community, and you blend those together, I think if COVID has given us one golden opportunity, it's to disrupt the Victorian type assessment strategies that we've seemed to have adopted for a century or more. You've got to have 3 A's at A level or 41 points at IB to get to a certain university. Those days have gone, and universities are coming on fast with a wider range of approaches. And so we'll put together a MiSK portfolio, which will include some elements of the core academics that we all know that work well. But we'll also have internships. We're also going to have leadership academy training. So we've just worked to deal with IDG out of Sandhurst, Royal Military Academy. And we'll have an entire leadership component to the curriculum. And we're going to have these key pillars operating alongside each other. So a child will come not just with 10 GCSEs and 3 A levels. They'll have a combination of fewer of a core curriculum type academic credential, plus these other add-ons that will make them a much broader, holistic child. And that's an exciting project to be involved in.
Isn't that interesting, though? I mean, I'm
right into that, to be involved in that.
I'm just reflecting back that's, ironically enough, so much of what was happening at both Bedford, where you were before, and Westbourne, in terms of the development of the whole child.
Yeah.
In terms of developing their IQ, of course, developing their IQ in academics, but their emotional quotient as well, their physical quotient in terms of developing them physically and their coordination, etc. And also, very importantly, their spiritual quotient within that non-religious, but the aspect of all of us have a degree of spiritual elements which are important within it. And what a fantastic opportunity you've got in a really interesting part of the world to try and develop a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that looking from what you say, that's certainly the basis of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, mind, body, and spirit, they're all three as an equilateral triangle, if you like, to make sure that we grow and develop children. Now, that's been going on for hundreds of years in leading independent schools in the UK. I think COVID has again taught us the importance of interpersonal relationships and all of that.
Yes.
What used to be in the curriculum until this obsession with assessments and raising the bar with PISA results and all that sort of stuff, that really has beset education for 20 years now. And where we have to work away from that. I can remember when I was teaching at Bedford as an English teacher, running the golf, coaching rugby, coaching cricket, chapel warden. I mean, we were actively involved in everything. It was a real blessing that Philip Evans, the headmaster at the time, gave me so many opportunities to explore. But it was also the children. the students, the boys at Bedford had time, especially in their lower sixth year, not to focus too much on grades and modules and results, but they had time to go and do Amnesty International, and they had time to go and do CCF. I used to take sailing. We'd go sail around the islands. We'd go and do all sorts of adventurous stuff. They'll remember that well beyond,
even your best English lessons, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm afraid, absolutely.
But it's the value of the immeasurable, which is the most important thing. Actually, what's really valuable in life can't be measured as easily. And I'm fascinated how that could be embodied within the MiSK structure.
Absolutely. Yeah, in 1988, I was at the University of Cape Town. That gives my age away a little bit, but I was doing my PGCE. The equivalent in South Africa is called an HDE. And the first lecture I walked into, and this really very, very high quality lecturer, the first thing he said to us, and he had a big cartoon on the overhead projector. Remember those with acetates and all of that? And
I'm very good at it.
Yeah, I'm still quite good at that sort of technology, but I can turn a fire on, which is quite impressive.
I know, more than I can.
But he said, education is what you remember after you forget what you learned at school. And that was the first bit of educational philosophy that I really learned. And I've held on to that all my career. And I think, if we can give children extraordinary opportunities as school leaders, and that's why I love doing what I do. And I've loved being on the international stage, both at Brighton, Cranley, and then on into James, and now here. I have this huge passion for giving children as many and as varied the opportunities that we can give them as school leaders, to encourage them, to motivate them, to get stuck into anything and everything that's available. And also, my job is partly encouraging staff and students to be as wide-reaching as possible, and to take the glass ceiling off education and really open up their eyes to possibilities that maybe nobody's ever thought of before. The other part of our job, as you'll know, Jonathan, as well, especially in for-profit context. Fortunately, I'm not in that now. I'm in a very generous context right now, but in the for-profit context that I was in, is working hard with the stakeholders, working with the boards, working with the investors, etc., to encourage them to think a little bit less about, how much profit is actually enough profit, and to think more about actually, if we give a huge amount of input into what these children can achieve and give them opportunities, if we invest in the right areas, actually the long-term gains will be huge, and everyone's a winner.
And you end up with, but it's always that interesting thing of developing a whole learning community within the school of parents, staff, and others. And the reason I'm talking to you is now you can begin to think of an answer to Nalini's question, which you might have seen coming up. But it's developing a whole learning culture where, in fact, part of the job with the principal, the director of education, or whoever it is to educate upwards, as well as leading the learning and leading the learning community, which develops with parents as well as students and staff. Often it's actually a lot of education is taking place through the children of both the staff and the parents, and it's how we can lead them into it.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Brendan, whether you want to touch. I'm conscious of time, but whether do you want to touch a little bit more?
Would you want me to touch on Nalini's question, or
that would it would be an idea, because I wanted to segue slightly into some of the work, just to reference it, with UWC teaching. They've got a great learning academy in Singapore. So Nalini's asked any more about the teacher training academy you're planning. What do you see are the main challenges in setting this up? And do you think there's something that any good international school could or should be doing?
Yeah, well, it's great to see you, Nalini. Seeing you in words anyway. A dear friend from ISC. Nalini, and it's good to have her on the call. Yeah, I think, obviously the key challenge is making sure that we actually get some really outstanding curriculum writers and developers on our team. People such as the lady we were talking about just before this call started, Jonathan, people like that are the sort of high quality individuals that we need to attract in. This thing won't happen on its own. Again, it always comes down. Any school and any academy, any form of education comes down to the quality of the team. And so that'll be my primary task as a key challenge, is to go and identify some really key developers, because we're developing the curriculum alongside the pedagogical approach. And we're working at the moment with our board on a fantastic process of connecting with some of the leading teacher training arms in various organizations internationally. Finland, I mentioned earlier, is one country that we're communicating with on this sort of strand. Some really exceptional individuals and teams that we're going to sign up to come and join us on this journey, both in terms of the curriculum writing per se, and the development of that, working with our own school, with our own teachers, of course, which is another reason why I think MiSK Schools will be a really attractive package for teachers. But the other thing is obviously to also to find people that will come and be part of that academy as trainers and developers. I mean,
and within that cultural setting, and how you're going to work within that. It's not an obstacle. It's how you enable things to happen within that.
And in our culture and in our context, of course, Arabic and Islamic studies and national identity subjects, the national studies, social studies curricula, in their traditional sense are let's just be frank about it. They're pretty boring and mundane, very traditional in their delivery, very rote, very old school. So training and developing and getting a cultural shift and creating new curriculum and new methodology in terms of pedagogy and teaching and training the staff up in that is another key challenge. No school seems to have succeeded in cracking the nut that is Arabic. I've not seen it yet.
And it's really important.
Yeah, and it's crucial. And all of our local families are really urgently wanting us to achieve something. So I think that's going to be a very primary focus for us.
Yeah, and that's going to be a nice challenge. And Dr. Leslie Hunter has been in touch about leadership curriculum. Perhaps we might deal with that outside the chat, because there are a number of different curriculums that there are really different approaches which can be taken in terms of leadership training. And it's essential to develop those skills in young people. As we were touching on, it's that holistic development. And also, we often talk about leadership skills. Can I just say, part of being a good leader is learning how to be a follower.
Absolutely.
That it's not just about alpha male leadership. It's about learning how to work within that team, and the followership can be as important as the leadership. And it's where that servant leadership aspect, which you touched on earlier on, comes through.
Our job is to build up and develop leadership, isn't it? From within. Yes. I mean, capacity building within the school, which is one of the reasons why we're running this academy. And we'll be doing, we already have a bunch of our staff on middle, senior, and even principal level training with UCL. And we're working, and that's going to feed into this academy.
That's going to be really exciting.
And Leslie's question is so important, I think, in terms of leadership capacity building. I mean, any school leader ought to look at themselves and say, how many leaders have I developed into future leaders? I'm proud to say that at Cranley, for example, 75% of the senior leadership team that I worked with at the start are now heads. That's a mark for me that we did a good job.
And it's heads and senior leaders within schools, or taking senior pastoral roles, which is really important to do.
Absolutely.
And it's that which is, but also within the pupils we've had the privilege to work with as well. I'm very conscious that our fire is about to run out, because you didn't put another log on, but
no, it's going well.
It's all going well. Barney has arrived to make sure we behave properly. So that, Brendan, I'm really grateful. Thank you so much. That was a really interesting part of discussing so many of our shared ideas, which I think could be very helpful to leaders in international schools elsewhere. And it's a fascinating part. We must continue this conversation on, offline, virtually, and hopefully we will see each other again. The match teas at Westbourne House, I have to say, were very good.
Likewise, Milton. Fond memories. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, Barney, I think we've run out of time. Is that about right?
Yeah, we have, unfortunately. Yeah, thank you both so much. That was great. I really enjoyed listening there in the background. I'm sure our audience did too. I'm sure they really appreciated the brilliant insight you guys offered there.
Fantastic. I know we'll get back to Jenny. Jennifer has put in a a question there, which I really a key part, which I'm going to leave to Brendan to answer.
I'll respond in person. That'll be fine.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Just before we do finish, I'd just like to redirect our audience. Just you'll be shown a short survey once we end the session. We'd really appreciate you taking just a couple of minutes to complete that. It really helps us put together our future event.
No, that in the job description.
No, we didn't know anything about assessment.
They're putting up numbers like 2.
It's whether you go on the fire or not, Brendan.
Lovely. So we just, one more big thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Our next session coming up on the live stream is 10:30 for me here in London, or 2:30 if you're with us from Dubai. So we very much hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Brendan. That's really kind.
Brilliant. Great to see you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.